Mzansi is yet to finalise its election manifesto for the 2024 elections. The party held its People's Convention in October last year, which was supposed to be followed by the manifesto launch later this month. Songezo Zibi is the Mzansi national leader, and he joins us now. Mr. Zibi, I appreciate your time. Thanks so much for coming on to the show. Now, there was an expectation that your manifesto would be launched. It's a few months to the elections. Yeah. Are you not leaving it too late?
No, absolutely not. And thanks for having me. We're actually going to be probably the first political party to release its manifesto. Ours is coming out next Saturday, the 20th of January, at the Hartfeld Center in Pretoria. We initially wanted to release it in November last year and then release a detailed national turnaround plan. But we've decided to stick with the manifesto, simplify our messaging, so that we can be more effective during the election campaign.
Now, you talked about confusion, that there'd be a huge amount of confusion. Too much information, I think, was the issue at the back end of last year. Now, the challenge that you face is that there have been 2 or 3 political parties since then, right, that have launched. So there's potentially a lot more information, a lot more choice for those in the electoral space. Your thoughts on that?
No, look, South Africa's political space has seen a lot of political parties in recent years, and Mzansi is one of them. But I think what tends to differentiate political parties from one another is both the overall proposition of the political party, and in an election setting, it's what you say in your manifesto. And we are the first one out of the blocks this year, before anybody else.
I'm not entirely sure that will give you any advantage, and the reason I think that is twofold. One of those reasons is that many individuals are, the vote is largely populist. Just how popular are you? I mean, if you went to the average person and you asked them to tell you what the ANC's election manifesto from the last election was, they probably don't remember. So people vote by and large on popularity. I think would be the one challenge that you would face. And I suppose that the next challenge is, what do you have to offer? Suppose we would like to, if we can, get some info prior to the launch of that manifesto. What does Mzansi hope to give the people of South Africa in this very important election year?
No, certainly I'm happy to provide you with a preview of what's coming out next Saturday. But on the point about popularity, I think what's more popular in South Africa is actually not to vote at all. So to the extent that a lot of these political parties are popular, it's not translating to people actually turning up at the vote to vote for them. Out of 41 million people in 2021, 28 million never turned up to vote. And we've been speaking to a lot of those people who voted before, have decided to turn away from politics for a reason, which leads me to next Saturday. What we've decided to do conceptually is to focus on the things that people talk about at home, with their family, with their loved ones, with their friends, things that concern them the most. And a couple of those things, Hugo. One, hunger is a big issue in South Africa, specifically, not just jobs and that sort of thing, but actually hunger, people have got no food. Secondly, young people are dying and their lives are being destroyed by drugs and substance abuse. Alcohol abuse is so bad, people do not regard it as substance abuse at all. So that's the second thing, as an example that people are talking about. The last one, because there are lots, is that there are a lot of women who would love to have a job, who are looking for work. And you know what? They're not able to work because there are no daycare facilities where they can leave their children, especially in poor communities. So your definition and expression of what people call bread and butter issues, I think we will have the most incisive of the political parties.
You raise important issues, and those 3 issues that you've spoken about speak to specific segments of the voters, right? Because it is amongst the poor that cannot afford childcare. And you talk about people that live in informal settlements, for instance, and how many of these women are having to leave their young children alone at home with nobody to look after them, and susceptible to all sorts of problems. So let's talk about the process of engagement, because what's going to be absolutely key is, if you have a sound message, how do these people hear your message? What access will they have to it?
So Hugo, they've produced this message. Let me give you an interesting statistic. About 45% of our activists are unemployed. So this is the politics they want. It's not something that we're telling other people that is good for them. We are expressing a politics that is the day-to-day experience of our activists, of our volunteers, of our organizers, and so on. And we need to kind of understand that. The second thing, though, is that even in higher income stratas, you've got a lot of single mothers, as an example. Because women in South Africa bear the burden of childcare in general. Even when they are both parents in a family, it is the woman who has to forage and find food and so on. And so we've constructed this manifesto in a way, and that goes to your point about engagement, that within the first 2 minutes of engaging with a voter, they will understand that we're talking to issues that are really dear to their hearts and not cheap sloganeering about macro issues which are often abstract and don't speak to the day-to-day experience of people.
Now, a few moments ago, I was speaking to the chair of Action SA, and one of the conversations we had certainly is around funding for campaigns.
Yes.
It is not cheap.
It's not cheap
to get out there, and obviously the Electoral Funding Act has changed somewhat over the last 24 months, where people have to disclose the sources of funding, and what that does, it causes many individuals or organisations to shy away because they don't publicly want to fund.
Yeah.
What are your views on that? And certainly, what are some of the challenges that you're facing in funding this campaign as a relatively new party?
The first thing I want to say is I think transparency is necessary in South African politics from a funding perspective. I mean, the current disclosure requirements, there are instances where they are not helpful. So we have people who could give more than 100,000 rand, but they say, I'll give you 99,000 rand, 999 rand 99 cents, so that I am not disclosed. Otherwise, I'm going to lose my job, my business is going to suffer, and so on. But on the whole, I think that introduction of transparency of payments in cash or in kind is a good thing. We have made our submission to the IEC. The next IEC report with political funding sources is going to include Rise Mzansi's donors, and we think that's a good thing.
So let's talk about reach. And I mean, you've described to us the segments, at least 3 of the segments that you potentially would like to target. Is this reach related to Gauteng? Is it across the country? Who are you speaking to? Because part of the strategies of some of the other political parties is they've tried not to bite more than they can chew. So they've gone into a specific province or a city in order to launch themselves, and then as time progresses, they spread their wings.
No, we're doing the same. We're in all 9 provinces, but within each province, we're targeting specific areas where we believe, from a resources perspective, we can afford to campaign meaningfully and secure the votes that we need. And secondly, I think just in terms of what is possible within the time that we have between now and the election, we have a long-term view. Our goals as Rise Mzansi are 20 to 25-year goals about a total transformation of South Africa. This is not the only election we're going to fight. By 2026, we'll reach double and triple the number of people that we are reaching now. And we are patient in that endeavor.
So let's talk about those numbers that you're targeting. I mean, what does a successful election look like for you post that day when everyone goes to vote in 2024?
A successful election is one where no group of political parties are able to form a coalition government without talking to us. Because that is the only way. It's through that leverage that we're going to be able to represent what South African voters and the South African people have asked us to put down as a pound of flesh towards the formation.
But Mr. Zibi, is that practical? I mean, we're potentially 5 months away from that election, right? And your expectation is that by the time we get to May 2024, if the elections are held in May 2024, that you will have reached a significant number of people to the point, and also convince them that Rise Mzansi is a party to vote for.
Look, I mean, our reach is national, like I said. I think the awareness of and sentiment towards Rise Mzansi nationally is now increasingly undeniable. I think what we need to understand is the electoral structure of South African politics, because in the current formulation that we have, over 80% of the seats in Parliament belong to 3 parties. And yet you don't have 3 or 4 or 5 parties in Parliament. And as you've seen in the metros, and you will see in some of the provinces next year, you don't need to get 60% or 45% to get into a coalition. We have announced a minimum target of between 5.5% and 7.5% next year. And that's a very significant number.
This year?
This year, yeah.
Well, you got to get the election days, right?
Sorry?
I said the election is this year.
The election is this year. Listen, it's an interesting question. There is another political party formed in KZN by a former president, right? People don't ask that kind of question. I mean, I'm not faulting you. I think some of these things are perceptive. And in South Africa, we are tend to be more enamored by fame and over-project the meaning of that fame. Our organizing model is premised on speaking to people day to day, doing door to door. What do you see in the normal election campaign? We've been doing since April. About between 23 and 25,000 people per week join Rise Mzansi as supporters to say, we've heard your message, we like what you're doing, we will vote for you.
So how big is your supporter base at the moment, very quickly?
I can't say, because that's our secret source.
So we have
it's hundreds of thousands.
So we've got to wait till the election to know what those numbers are. Songezo Zibi, Rise Mzansi National Leader, appreciate your time. Thanks so much for speaking to us, and look forward to catching up on that election manifesto launch, which I think you said is...
So we think it's going to be on the manifesto launch 20th of January, next weekend.
20th of January next week.
In Tswana, yes.
Yes, so we will keep tabs on that. Thanks so much for your time. We were speaking to Rise Mzansi National Leader.